Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations from Stritch. It was wonderful to walk over here today and have the snow melting on campus. We're really excited to be back on campus and back with you this afternoon. Talk a little bit about a few, exciting news that's going on. I wanted to start by congratulating Dr. Amanda Harsey. She received a grant from the Center for Undergraduate Research in Mathematics for a project that Dr. Harsey is going to be working on with three of our undergraduate students to conduct research over the next year on hockey analytics. I have found, and we will be having a program probably next month on our celebration of scholarship. I have found it very interesting over the last 5 years how many of our people in math use sports and the way in which sports is a kind of, it's a model in which you can use past performance to predict, but the mathematical modeling is fascinating. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see what Dr. Harsey does with some of our undergraduate students. Also wanted to congratulate our entire College of Business, the faculty, administration, and of course our students. But we just received final confirmation of our accreditation being reaffirmed for 10 more years, which is the most you can get. And so it's a real testament to the work that Dr. Ryan Butt, who leads the College of Business, is doing. And actually Dr. Butt and Dr. Sheila Boyson, who has redesigned and directs our MBA program, will be our guest next week on the program, and we're really excited to have them to talk about the new MBA program as well as many other things going on in the College of Business. So really looking forward to that conversation next week. I unfortunately missed a couple things in the last week because of other commitments. But Chris, I know you led a panel this week on the issue of democracy and kind of what it means. And I'm looking forward to actually watching it on YouTube. But tell me a little bit of how it went on Tuesday.
Oh, it was terrific. It was such a wonderful panel. And hello, everyone. Great to be with you. I obviously was in the middle of it, so I'm a little bit biased. But I thought the three professors, Dr. Mark Schultz, Joe Kosminski, and Laurette Leeson were just terrific panelists, and we had a really great conversation about all kinds of different aspects of the implications of democracy, from the 20th century history of voter access to the kind of psychological elements that go into political ideology and its development in individual people, and in the relationship between factual knowledge, science, and other of the types of expertise that universities and professors provide that go into policy making. Were all part of our discussion, but it was much more wide-ranging than that, and there were great questions from the audience, and so I think it's available on YouTube to watch still if anyone is interested in going back to that. It was really really fun event.
That's wonderful, and of course, we are in the midst. I feel like and I know this is why you set it up. We're in the midst of this time where questions around the fundamental nature of democracy are so kind of relevant to what we're thinking about now. Obviously, another part of the academic world that you're deeply engaged in, we had another production, a virtual production, but a production by the Philip Lynch Theater this past weekend of Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson. I know many of us on campus enjoyed it. You were saying how much you enjoyed the production. So maybe you could speak a little bit about, both how great the production was, but also, kind of both what we've learned and experienced from doing theater in this kind of live/virtual, and then what we're looking forward to next fall as we hopefully come back to live performance in which the audience can be present.
Sure, and it would be great, at some point in this semester, I'm sure we'll be able to talk more directly with some of our theater professionals, because it's been really inspiring to watch them put on plays all year long in this virtual format. And it is a really challenging medium. And, I think going through COVID and going through watching virtual presentations of all different kinds, including the one we're doing right now, we see different aspects of things come out. So the theater experience is particularly challenging to capture movement and voice and inflection and different angles of people's acting faces and so on. It's so good, and I just cannot believe how great of a job our theater department, the Philip Lynch Theater, has done with this. And I just really enjoyed this play. I've never seen it before. It's a story of a historical figure, an astronomer, Henrietta Leavitt, who was a kind of turn of the century female astronomer, and I don't need to describe how rare and special that was, and it's just a really, really inspiring story. I was moved by it and by the great performances by our students.
It's great. So, on the other side, in some sense of our co-curricular life, athletics is up and running. You and I are both very well aware of how many sports are happening. I think last weekend there were, I think it was Saturday, that there were 8 or 9 different contests going on because almost all of our sports are happening this spring, which is exciting, but also very busy for athletic directors and coaches and all of the people that assist, like our trainers. Our number 3 ranked men's volleyball team, and I will tell you, they had another match last week in which they came back from down 2 sets to sweep the last 3. It was pretty amazing. But they play against McKendree this Friday, hosting that match. Baseball season opens this week with a 3-game series against Tribeca Nazarene down in Nashville, so it'll be a little warmer for the men on the baseball team to be down in Nashville rather than here in Romeoville. And our men's and women's basketball teams play tonight. Their last 2 regular season games this weekend. Tonight we play against Missouri S&T. And then Maryville this weekend. So we're excited about all that's happening in athletics and some real success on the field, and excited about that. I did want to mention, I just got off this morning. I was asked to chair an advisory panel for a recent gift. Amazon, as a corporation, as many of you probably know, because of those of you that live in the southwest suburbs and are on campus and drive around, are well aware of the many Amazon warehouses. They employ about 15,000 people in Will County and are their largest employer in Will County. They just gave a $500,000 gift to the Community Foundation of Will County, and I was incredibly honored to be asked to chair a panel that will look at how we can continue to develop the workforce in Will County. And this, for me, directly ties into our guest today. I know you're going to talk about some COVID things, but we're really excited to have Mary Myers with us today. And of course, she works on career services for our students. How do they get into the workforce in their chosen professions? How do we prepare them? And I know we're going to have lots of conversations about that. But I thought it was an interesting synergy between the Amazon gift and the way in which many people within Will County are going to be. We're going to be making grants of this $500,000 to different members of the community. Different, might be school districts. It might be combinations of community colleges and universities. It might be companies working with a community college or working with a university to prepare students and people that have lost jobs to retool themselves for future work in the new economy. So I'm really excited about the work. It's a great panel for university presidents, as well as members of workforce development and the Center for Economic Development. But we'll get to more of that later. I know you have some COVID announcements to make, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Sent.
Thank you, and that is really exciting. That gift is incredible, and our connection to it is so exciting for future development of programming. So I do want to make a few detailed COVID announcements, and again, I will have an email out today about this, or about several of these things. The first thing I want to say is that we've had an uptick in positive cases in the community in the last week or so. I feel like we were talking in the show last Thursday, about how there had been very low number of cases, and I feel like right as we were speaking about it, some positive tests were coming through that afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and onto Friday and Saturday. So there has been, so I just want to refer people to the site that's tracking, if you have interest in this, that tracks both the most recent the most recent positive cases, as well as our residential students in quarantine and isolation. And so this is just, I feel like this is, or we have a pretty good sense that this is an isolated series of events. We just did a testing Tuesday, where the results came back all through the day yesterday, and it was 100% negative on many tests and so on. So we feel like through the practices that we've talked about a lot, quarantine and isolation, and being wise about contact tracing and careful, it looks like we're through this little uptick, but knock on wood, and it's just a reminder of how important all of the facets of the Flyers promise are, and we need to stay vigilant around them to continue to use face coverings, distancing, washing hands, daily app screenings, stay home if you're sick, and if there are ever any questions, report and consult with the COVID hotline team. We will be returning to testing on Tuesday. Will County will be back to provide COVID-19 testing next Tuesday morning. And if any members of our community are interested in that, contact the hotline team and you can reserve a time slot for that. The major thing I want to talk about today before we introduce our guest is travel. So we have abbreviated spring break coming up in a couple of weeks, and we are aware that there's a strong, people have been pent up for a long time. Winter's coming to a close. Spring break is here, so people can take a rest and focus their attention on other things besides their academic work. And we also know, as I just said earlier, a few seconds ago, that COVID is still very much with us. So I'm going to send out a fairly lengthy set of recommendations from the university that relate to travel. And really this advice is just a reminder of travel advice that is applicable to any travel on weekends or anything else. There's nothing particularly unique to spring break about it, but we just know that people are beginning to ask questions. So the CDC has put out guidelines around travel, or that we're showing on the screen the most updated example of that. It's notable how clear and explicit their recommendation is not to travel. And I know, we recognize that it's hard for people, but their recommendation is to only travel if absolutely necessary. So that is also our recommendation, to stay home if possible. Staying home is the best option. If you do choose to travel, be very careful about researching where you're going and the spread of COVID and potential restrictions in those places where you're going. Avoid any sort of gatherings outside your carefully selected group that you might be traveling with, whether it be your family or close friends. So that would include restaurants, that would include indoor eating, drinking establishments, public transportation, and other groups where people congregate that you've had no access to before the particular trip. Getting tested a few days before the travel and a few days after is our recommendation. And I mentioned that we will be providing testing here, and then we always have through the Lewis U app and through our website. There's always a few links away from finding out where the closest testing site to you is located. We recommend quarantining when returning to campus for 5 to 7 days, and to restrict higher risk activities even beyond those 5 to 7 days to a 2-week period. And then again, as usual, as we would always say, consider any symptom, even an unusual headache, as a reason to stay home and stay away from other members of the community. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and I know this is
and I know
kind
there's
of,
some. I guess what I wanted to do, Chris, is just follow up on a couple things you said, but try to tie it into some questions we received before the program started.
Great.
Which were mostly not about testing, but about vaccinating. And I guess I want to just get your feedback because I know you're so involved in this. You're constantly working with, with Nancy and many other people on campus, and we have all these connections into. Will County Community Health Department and Public Health and Illinois, as well as Jewel Osco and others. But it feels to me like as a community, we are shifting our focus from testing to vaccinating. So a lot, like I said, the questions are, do I need to be vaccinated to take classes this summer? Do I need to be vaccinated to come back next fall? Will employees need to get vaccinated? What about the kind of, general requirements of vaccination in terms of who can, and I guess what I would say is, I know we've talked about this multiple times on this program, and we don't have all the answers. I think that's the difficult part for some of these questions. We don't have the answers today. Maybe you could talk just a little bit, not about the answers for today, but how you view, and let's just say, the first maybe timeline on this horizon is summer, coming to class, and we've made some announcements about the kind of way we're going to be delivering class this summer. So I think the vaccination question is, it's not that it's not a relevant question, it's that many of our classes are going to be in an online fashion. So then that moves us to the fall. Do you have a sense of when we might be able to let the community know about vaccination, if we're going to require things, those kind of things? Because I know it's not today, but it's probably sometime in June or July that we'll be able to make better informed decisions based on all that's happening with vaccines. But I did want to at least let people know we heard their questions and we understand their anxiety, and for some people, frustration. Some people are really frustrated that my neighbor's getting vaccinated and I don't know why, and I'm not, or why are high school teachers getting vaccinated and college, university professors are not. So maybe you could just speak a little bit about that, and I know we want to get to our guest.
Right. Those are all really great questions, and you're right. People are asking those questions, and we're talking about them. And as we've said on some other particular topics, it's the closer we get to the fall or the summer, depending on what the question is about, the easier it is to have informed decisions. So we're always kind of managing that balance between making the right decisions far in advance and getting as much information as possible. And the vaccine question is sort of a good example of that right now, where we don't yet know exactly how available it will be for all the members of our community to be vaccinated. That impacts our discussion about requiring it, but it's definitely out there as a discussion item around our immunization policy, and will that be amended to include COVID-19 vaccine, how that will impact attending, living on campus, attending class on campus, working on campus, as opposed to doing things remotely. All of those are questions that we will resolve. And to answer your question directly, I would think maybe by mid-April or something like that, we should probably have a good handle on predicting the types of requirements that we have. And in my mind, we again could change this, but in my mind, it's more about the fall than about summer, because as you say, it's summer is a lot sooner, and so we're less definitive about how far the vaccines will go by summer, and also most of our instruction will be online in the summer. I also want to say that, and this is actually in my message today, but I didn't say it out loud earlier, that the CDC guidelines and our advice and our practice is still for all of the requirements of the Flyers Promise apply to people who have been vaccinated, and that will likely remain in place for a long time. So in terms of how people are living their daily lives right now, I think having the vaccination is great, but our day-to-day advice about masking, distancing, and everything like that will continue to apply to all members of our community. And then I really want to say that testing, it's true, I think there's something going on. I mean, if you look at the statistics for the state, the the number of tests that we do has not decreased in any meaningful way. I think they're starting to consolidate testing into larger testing sites, and it's still the most valuable tool we have, or one of the most key tools we have for at least determining action and doing a corrective action when someone has been exposed to COVID and so on. And so it's still going to be a part of what we do for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's great. So I think with that we have addressed at least the majority. And what I guess I will I think Dr. Sint and I really probably on a weekly basis from now until April or May will be saying something about vaccinations and something about testing almost every week. So we're not ignoring people's specific questions, but we want to wait until we have the appropriate information to actually answer them. And so now let's talk a little bit about, and I guess as I think about this, and I really appreciate you working with Mary to bring her in. I know you're going to introduce her, but obviously part of this is around anxiety that many of our students who graduated in December or are graduating in May have about this economy and how to think about their career. So maybe you can introduce the topic and our guest.
Yeah, we're really excited to as you said, to begin to think about the way that COVID has impacted our career approach at Lewis, really, and then to have some wisdom and more generally about how it's been going in the workforce, and again tying back to the grant in our local community, and then maybe to get some really practical advice around how to position yourselves if you're a student watching and about to graduate in a few months and so on, how to think through what it's like to be someone going on the job market in these conditions. So I'm really excited to introduce Mary Myers, our Executive Director of the Career Center, and I have as usual, a sort of biography to read, and I really want to embrace that right now. So Mary's been at Lewis for 6 years after serving for 7 years as Director of Employee Relations at NIU, where she received her Master of Science degree in Education, specializing in higher education. Before starting her professional career or professional work in career services, she worked in retail at Water Tower Place in Chicago, serving as a certified training manager for a chain of 350 stores. She has been, over her career, she's been a stay-at-home parent, has worked in teaching textiles, merchandising, and sewing, which is the focus of her undergraduate degree from the University of Kentucky. And I'm dwelling a little bit on Mary's biography here because, in her long and accomplished career, because some people in our community may not know that Mary has announced her retirement and that her last day officially at Lewis is March 6th. So we wanted to have Mary on and congratulate her on that and to get as much out of her as we can before her retirement.
In the last 2 weeks of her life at Lewis. Congratulations, Mary. What a wonderful career, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really am very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mary. And so I think we're just going to ask you to take it away. I know you have a presentation to give, and we'll probably just ask you to start with that, and then we'll come back and interrupt you while you're presenting probably, but also ask some follow-up questions when you're finished.
So, thank you so much.
So we can probably start the slideshow. Great.
Okay, next, John. So thank you again for having me here to speak today. I'm going to cover a number of areas, primarily the class of 2020 and where did they go? What are you doing? I want to talk about changes in job search during the pandemic because it has impacted how we search for jobs. I also want to talk a little bit about the pandemic recovery employment projections because I think that's important for all of us, going forward. How do we prepare for the new jobs that will be there? And then if we have time, I have some words of advice from employers to the class of 2021 on their job search. Next. So Lewis University Career Services administers a first destination survey to look at where our new graduates are getting jobs and continuing their education. So the class of 2020 included 1,072 undergraduate students that completed their degrees during the summer and fall of 2019, that was pre-COVID, and then spring of 2020 during COVID. So while this chart shows the breakdown by colleges, we in Career Services really look at the data by majors. So every major has an assigned career advisor to support the students in their job search. Based on that 539 that reported their first destination for class of 2020, 89% indicated that they were working or continuing their education. You can see that 45 here, we're still looking at the time that we closed the survey. 533 did not report, and so this gave us a 50.3% response rate. Next. So because of the pandemic, we really looked at the outcomes for the May grads during COVID, and then we looked at the summer and fall grads before COVID. And we found several significant differences, including there was an 8% decline in the number of students that were working from the May grads. And then there was a 10% increase in the number of students continuing their education. This was also for our May grads during COVID. We're thinking that, in May, it was anybody's guess as to what was happening with the workplace, and a lot of students just opted just to remain in school and continue their education. There was also a small increase in the number of grads that were still looking for from our May grads. And the response rate, though, for both pre-COVID and during COVID was about the same, about 50%. Next. So the job search has changed a bit with the onset of the pandemic. We saw a lot of delayed start dates for many of the full-time and internship offers that were actually, many of them were later rescinded. And then as other industries started to boom and turn around, employers then were complaining about not being able to fill open positions. So the summer months were really very muddy. The unemployment, of course, was immediately impacted by the travel restrictions, the stay-at-home orders, closings of non-essential businesses. But then through remote work and remote learning opportunities, they all grew through the internet and software programs that were available. Next. Just looking a little bit at industries, almost every industry has been impacted by the pandemic. Retail specifically, many stores have shut their doors for good, but those retail outlets that were classified as essential, the grocery stores and your big box stores, they're doing very well. And e-commerce, the online shopping, has exploded. And the New York Times has coined some of the online retail growth as the new boredom economy, because boredom is really influencing consumer purchasing. We've seen the growth in consumer services through home remodeling. Those that are working from home, updating their offices, they're not going anywhere, so they're fixing their homes. We saw an increase in hiring for transportation, supply chain, and logistics. The fulfillment centers are working overtime so the supply chain can try to keep up with demand. And we saw an increase in hiring for education, healthcare, and technology. Now, skipping on down, I want to speak to aviation, hospitality, food service, and entertainment. Just a deep dive. But business and international travel, being very important to the airlines, may take longer to recover. But we are seeing an upswing in those that are vaccinated and getting vaccinated, those of us who are over 65. We are booking our travel. And so we're hoping that might help the airlines a bit, and they can capitalize on that. Aerospace defense is growing as well. Next. So changes in how employers are recruiting during COVID. The fall campus recruiting was, including job fairs, were done virtually. So no more face-to-face, it was all done pretty much online. Spring is scheduled for virtual, and we'll talk a little bit about our virtual job fair coming up next week. For the fall projections, we're looking at a combination of face-to-face, but primarily virtual because there are many advantages to employers. There's no travel costs. They can meet with multiple students. The software has unlimited capability for them to connect. And so there's some of that will stay with us. So a huge increase, of course, in video interviewing. And so a reminder to our current students, be mindful of your background. What is the employer hearing and seeing? And then be sure to dress professionally for your video meets. Don't dress like you do for class. And look at the camera. Not like I'm looking down reading, but when you're meeting with someone, be sure to look at the camera. Remote and on-site working. So some will return, but some will not. And many companies have given up their office and building leases because they really have found that the remote working has been successful and productive. And then some will be a hybrid. The pandemic and move to a virtual workplace has had the greatest impact on internships. Some internships like accounting and computer science, IT positions, they transitioned pretty easily to virtual, but many didn't because employers didn't know how to set them up. They didn't know how to supervise them. And so now they've had summer and fall that they have some best practices to assist them with developing more productive online internship programs, or they can offer safety measures for those that are going to come into the work site. Next. So now I get to talk about Lewis and what's really happening with us specifically today, but taking a look at the number of jobs and internship postings for Lewis students and alumni, starting with January of 2020, last year, up through today. So you can see the red bar at the top there represents the full-time job postings at Lewis. And in January of 2020, that's a far left there, we had close to 3,000 jobs being posted for our students monthly. So January and February and March were all really solid months for postings. And then you can see where the red bar drops, March, April, May. Now that looks like it could be COVID, but it's also typical of campus recruiting. Typically drops off then. So recruiting season is January, February, March, then April and May are really onboarding for new hires and for interns. June and July and August, we saw an increase in full-time jobs, and then in September as well. Again, coming into the fall campus recruiting season, and then a drop off in November and December. But then look at that peak there on the far right. That's January 2021. That's last month. So we are almost right back to the same number of jobs posted with us this January as we were last January. So we're really pretty optimistic as to what's going on with jobs. You can see where February drops off, but that's not being realistic because it's only 2 weeks of February in there. So we'll take a look at the end of the month and see what how that really shakes out. The yellow bar is internships. Sorry, John, I just wasn't quite done with that because I want to speak to that has really not quite recovered where it was a year ago, but it's had some improvements and some dips. So January of 21 was looking okay. The blue bar across the bottom is part-time positions, and that's been really steady and consistent for us. And that's where all of our on-campus jobs are posted as well. So this all comes out of Handshake, out of our system, where employers look to meet with Lewis. Next. And just looking at the top industries that with active postings in our Handshake system for the past 30 days. And so on the far left, the top industry that's posting with us is K-12 education. The next one is nonprofits, which is really nice to see an increase in hiring with our nonprofits. The red bar there is actually internships. Then after that is healthcare. Of course, our solid nursing program, that's never a surprise. But then sports and leisure is up there for hiring with us. Then internet and computer science, and then moving over, we're seeing the government is really starting to post quite a bit too with us. Next. Okay, this was really exciting. I just got this report on Tuesday from Burning Glass Technologies. This is their February 2021 report. It's titled After the Storm, the Jobs and Skills That Will Drive the Post-Pandemic Recovery. So they are projecting 15.5 to 18 million new jobs, probably in the next 5 years, will be created from growth in these 5 sectors. So readiness, green, logistics, remote, and automated. And so this will be really interesting to look at how this breaks down and what this really means. It really ties everything together that we've seen over this year, all the muddiness, but emerging needs for employment and jobs are not only being created, but have been posted. And this survey was based on that. But this growth in these areas specifically will help shape the recovery from the pandemic. Next. So we use the system from Handshake. We've branded it Flyers Get Hired. And all of the resources for our students and alumni are available through this system. This is where they will find the job and internship postings, upload their resumes to be reviewed and other employment documents, career resources. So resume samples are in there, interview practice, career networking events. And I want to talk about that briefly because I think there's like about 100 in there. There's a lot going on. So if you want to work for like KPMG, or I saw Google has an event in there, Amazon has 2 events in there. But this is where employers are posting events and inviting our students to learn about their hiring practices and how to apply for their positions. So there's quite a bit in there. It's also where our job fairs are, and this is where students will go to sign up to participate in those. And then for job search appointments, students will sign up through their Handshake account. Every student at Lewis has a career management account in Handshake. And then alumni, of course, also have free access to this system. Next. So, of course, I have to mention the Job Expo that's coming up next week, March 3rd, 3 to 5. But because it's virtual, you have to pre-register for it. And then it's not just a registration, because that does nothing. You have to sign up for the one-on-one sessions to meet for 10 minutes with an employer that you're interested in connecting with. And then there are other sessions of information by employers that you can sign up for, and that allows up to 50 students to participate in that as well. So please get registered through your Handshake account or go to lewisu.edu/get-hired for our faculty if you'd like to see who the employers are that are recruiting and what they're recruiting for. Okay, next. So here are some words of advice to the class of 2021 from the employers that were surveyed for the Recruiting Trends 21 report. Work hard. When you get your full-time job, protect your personal time. Be flexible and adaptable, and be open to uncertainty. Being flexible is key to navigating your own career right now. Be open-minded. Be open to new opportunities. And even before COVID, most new grads didn't get their ideal job right out of college. Attitude. Your degree is valuable, but a good attitude can't be taught. And a note about the workplace from one of the companies, they said, you won't be able to wear your earbud or check your social media during work hours. Persistence. It may take some time to find employment in your desired field. It is better to have any job rather than no job, and think about volunteering or doing pro bono work in your field of preference. Virtual is the new reality. Be open to using many different forms of technology, which you already are because you're in higher ed. Be proactive about seeking out assistance, though, from colleagues and managers. And 3 words: plan, prepare, persist. So, and that concludes my presentation.
Mary, that was just excellent. We've actually had a few questions come in, but I guess I wanted to ask one question about one of the slides. I don't think we need to go back to it, but you might just be able to help me out with this. So I wrote down, as you were going through, these 5 key areas: readiness, green, logistics, remote, and automated. And the only one that I don't really understand in terms of what it means from an industry point of view is readiness. So could you tell me a little bit about what that means? And then we have a couple questions, like I said, one that came in from a student and one from a parent that we can get to. But could you tell me a little bit about, because it was number 1 on the list, I thought.
Yes. And my assumption when I first saw that, I was thinking of the January 6th riots. I thought, oh, we're not ready for that. But that's not what this is about. It's the pandemic has really shown weaknesses in our healthcare system, our cybersecurity, insurance, looking at all the storms. There's a range of other fields that provide social resilience. So the roles like cybersecurity experts and software engineers will be in demand, but so will project managers and people who are organizers of work. So, and there's a further breakdown in this report that really gets into the
Yeah, and for parents,
specific jobs.
I assume that, for parents and students, that report can be linked on our career services website, so that if they wanted to read the whole thing, they certainly could. But that's really helpful, because that does make sense to me once you say it. I guess what I would say, the other question that I had before we get to the questions that are coming in from the audience is just a general question about resources available to students for preparing to do video interviews, right? So you gave them some great advice, but it does feel to me that there would be value in practicing. And so could you just talk a little bit about the resources we have on campus for students to prepare for an interview, and maybe even prepare for next week in terms of the career fair? Or if there's any advice you have about them working with a friend of theirs, a roommate, whatever, to just prepare.
Absolutely. We have a software package. If you go to our website, lewisu.edu/career services, and click on student resources, go down and look at resumes and interviews, and click on big interview. We have site license to an amazing software that's all video interviewing practice. And there is a library of questions based on industry, based on level, if you're entry level or you're an experienced person. And through this video, it will ask you questions. You can record the responses. You can email your responses to a faculty member or a friend, your mom, whoever. There are sample answers in there. There are hints as to what the interviewer is really looking for. And it's just an amazing system that you can record it again and again and again until you're really confident with how you're going to respond. You can also do a mock interview with our office. But trying the video interviewing is just excellent, and it's free to our students.
That's great.
So along those same lines, in terms of some resources and advice for students, let's just say I am a senior at Lewis right now. It's almost March 1st, and I've been really busy dealing with online education and making it through COVID, and I haven't started my job search process, and I'm graduating in May. So what advice, what are some of the first couple steps somebody should take?
First of all, update your profile on your Handshake account. Employers might find you, and LinkedIn as well. review the resume samples that are there and start framing out your professional resume and then upload it for us to review it. When we do that, it's not just, a literary document. We're really looking at your skills and who you are. Our career advisors have met with faculty to find out what do our students really know when they graduate, so that we can incorporate those things into their resume and have the right keywords, the right skills in there. And this is when we start with the real serious job search. Through the handshake system, which is, a lot of analytics, and it's like shopping at Amazon. As you put in skills, keywords, and you start looking at positions, they will automatically start coming to your dashboard for you to start reviewing. You can apply directly through that system, but also with the career events coming up, you want to make sure you take advantage of networking, because most jobs are still found through networking.
That's great, Mary. We had a question come in from a parent that is really, this may be difficult for you to answer, but I think you're the best person to answer it. So we'll take a stab at it, which is, if you had a son or a daughter who was a first-year student at Lewis right now, not the senior who's about to graduate in 3 months, but the first-year student, do you have a sense, aside from that kind of list, or maybe you'd reinforce some of those things, about the influence that the pandemic is going to have on their career, right? So now they're 3 years and 3 months away from graduation, but their parents are saying, what is this pandemic how is it going to influence the way my daughter might be prepared, or she might want to prepare for when she graduates in 3 years? So do you have any, recommendations for that student and that parent to kind of alleviate the fears that they might have?
I do, and we love really, hearing from parents as well. I mean, I have two that graduated from college, so I can totally relate to their concerns. But we have been able to utilize Focus 2, which is a self-identification, self-exploration program, and we've implemented that into Cornerstone. We're about ready to implement it with the new transfer Cornerstone. But in this, there's a series of assessment tools. And these tools, they include like your personality, your workplace values, your leisure values, other things. They're all, professionally prepared assessments. And then there's a career match. When you combine all of those assessments, making recommendations for areas that could be a really good fit for you. We're always concerned that we're not just placing students anywhere. It's really about who that student is, and that self-identification, and looking for the right vocation. And then through that, the system is actually set up with Lewis. It's customized to Lewis University's majors. And so based on your results from these tools, it will identify and align them with the appropriate major that will help move them forward. And then it also has connections to, current positions that are posted and jobs. It's a more career-based, and then it's aligning your major really with who you are and where your skills and experiences and interests are.
That's great, Mary. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's really helpful information, and it's difficult, I know, for all of us to predict the job market 5 years from now or 4 years from now, but certainly that aspect of tying. What's so great about Lewis is tying that vocational exploration with constantly updating information about the professions and about the ways that the potential job opportunities are evolving. It's such a great thing about Lewis, and such a great accomplishment of yours, Mary, in terms of tying these things together. So as we close, I just wanted to ask you a couple questions that are more long-ranging about your career. And again, thank you so much for all this high-quality information today, and I hope people can maybe go back and rewatch some of this stuff, because there's so much great detail in there. So my question for you is, maybe could you just tell us a couple of things that you're most proud of that you're leaving as your legacy at Lewis from the last 6 years?
I think one of the areas that I've really focused on is providing equitable access to all of our services and programs. And we've done that through really reviewing and purchasing cutting edge software that our students can access, and really updating our website so that all of our resources and programs, our presentations are available. So people who are really self-directed or in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, I need to prepare for my interview tomorrow. Our website offers a lot of that. And if you're in Albuquerque or if you're in New York, it doesn't matter where you are, because the handshake system is a national system for posting. So you can search by location or whatever. So I think making sure that, especially with a large commuter population, adult populations, they need access. And so I feel really good that we've made that happen, and had the software to do that for them. I'd say the other thing was really changing up the model for how we deliver services. Career services really pretty much hasn't changed ever, I don't think. But how we deliver services and how we meet the needs and how we understand the workplace, we've changed the model and taken our career advisors and aligned them with as liaisons to different academic programs by major. So every major has someone aligned with them. And every year those career advisors, they develop a service delivery plan. What faculty are in your areas? Who are the department chairs? What's new? What are the programs? What are the organizations, the student organizations? Connecting our services through the faculty to students. So I see us more as a faculty support department, so that we can make sure that we're partnering with them to serve our students.
That's really helpful, and we're just so grateful for the wisdom and creativity you've brought to the career services in your time at Lewis. I just want to ask one last question, which is a little personal, if you're comfortable with it. Which is, you mentioned your family, and that reminded me to ask you, what are you most looking forward to in retirement?
Oh, I'm looking forward to warm winters, but being with my grandchildren. I have a second one on the way. She's due in April, so I have two granddaughters. I'm a Kentucky girl at heart. I love going back to Kentucky for horse racing. It's so beautiful there. And then I'm expecting that I'll teach some career classes and continue on with helping people find employment some way as a volunteer, whatever. It'll still be really rewarding to me.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today. We're incredibly grateful for all your work and your tenure here and your leadership, and the many, many, many Lewis alumni who depend on you and your team for their career and their vocation, which we really do believe. I mean, part of the Catholic intellectual tradition is that work is a part of the way that we bring about God's kingdom. That we actually make the world a better place through our work and our vocations, and so you're making that possible by matching up our students with these opportunities and the needs of businesses and nonprofits across the world. So thank you so much for that. We're really grateful.
Well, thank you so very much for the opportunity to share about our program.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of the week, and hopefully I will see you before you leave. Bye-bye. Well, I think that's it, Dr. Sent. So it's been great to be here again with Chris and to share so much information today. We went a little longer than we usually do, but I thought it was a great show. Grateful to Mary. And please, everyone, remain safe, remain healthy, take care of yourselves and those around you, and many blessings to you and your loved ones. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.